Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for coming to my studio. This is my working studio. Thank you so much for visiting. This is an informal demo. Informal only to a certain degree because what I'll do is share all the decision making and my intent on this work that I'm working on. You can see the reference on the left. My palette is in the upper right-hand corner, and I have zoomed in on the area that I'll be working on. Okay, so any questions that come up, please feel free to put them in chat. So real quickly, the way this is structured is for 1 hour, I'll be narrating and explaining everything I'm doing. Then a second hour for those of you who want to paint along. It's just a quiet, informal paint along after that. So this first hour is narrated, the second hour, I'm just quietly painting and inviting you into the studio. And hopefully that's also a motivation for your own painting practice as well. Okay, so first up, so I filled in a lot of the sky and started bringing in some of the colors. So I'm sort of happy with this, although I think there are some areas that could be actually a little bit darker, and I may tone down a little bit of the chroma. Okay, here I feel I have to redesign this shape. Okay, even if it's somewhat close to what's in the reference, I just feel I can have a better shape going on. So that's what I'm working on right now. I have a secondary palette that I'm using just so I can take what I need from these piles, remix up other piles, and then for most of the small little kid piles, I'm doing this on a secondary palette that I just am sort of holding on my lap. Okay. Also, I'm adding some darker areas. I'm not sure I like the red. I have a mirror poised so I can see in a mirror what I'm doing. I find it just helps me see better what I've done. And then I also have the screen. So I've got two other ways to check on my work. So while I like the value, I don't like the red. Over in another part, it was a little more purple, so I'm going to make changes. So redesigning this area to hopefully make elegant shapes, to get interesting values, but that still turn the piece. And then this little blip up here, I'm not sure it's working. It was meant to echo another part of the painting, but it doesn't look that realistic. So while it's not in the reference, I feel it needs something, even if it's just making this whole area a little bit bigger. So I'm designing, kind of like that actually, sort of designing some shapes. Just making sure all the shapes look nice together. And again, whenever you need me to pull back and to see a bigger part, let me know. Here, I figure you get to see placement of all the brush strokes, and I can even zoom in a little bit more if you'd like. So just let Chandra know in chat if you'd like that. Okay, so let me try to get it pretty close. Okay. So I have to put a little bit of an angle just for my own working situation. Okay. So it's cleaning up some of those shapes. So I just redid the palette, so I don't have the exact same colors that I did before. So that means a little bit of color mixing to find some of those colors that I used here. So color mixing. So this one's going to be the darker one. Okay. So I'm just going to fill in the shape, trying to design something that looks better than even the reference. And I'm doing lay it down and leave it alone strokes because the blue underneath it is sopping wet. So this is definitely true wet into wet painting. And then I'm stopping to check in the monitor in the background to make sure that I like it. I'm going to neutralize it with a little bit of the complement. I'm using transparent orange oxide Just had been trying it and I like what it does to the mixtures. Also, since all of this is wet, I can't really prop myself on it. So I'm doing a little bit of the zebra type of stroke. In other words, I had the darker one and now I've got the lighter one. And again, this is just that first pass, checking to see if I like it. It's a little bit darker, so it's turning nicely. Okay. And then maybe over here also, we'll make some changes. I've got some colors that are close to it. So I find paying very close attention throughout the painting to these subtle little design shapes really makes a difference. It seems maybe trivial, but ultimately, if every area feels like someone has paid attention to it, to trying to find the absolute best shapes, to try to find brushstrokes that are going in a direction that makes sense, I think it really adds to the quality of the painting. So it is slow and painstaking, but I think it's worth the time. So here I'm going back to try to find some of the colors from the previous. But also having the new one, it's like a Cézanne wall with new colors in it. So you can see there's different colors. Maybe these are a little more golden and richer, whereas these are a little bit cooler. So I'll have to decide if that's a good thing or not. So in other words, there's a little more white in them. Trying to be mindful of shape. So as I put a different color, if I put it in the middle only, that's going to feel like it's turning or create some type of gradient. I'm trying to be mindful of that also. Okay, and then it feels very golden. I think I'd like it to a little bit fade into the sky. So I'm adding a little bit of pale violet, which I have rimmed all around. Not with brushstrokes that I like, but that's another thing I'll go back and fix. Okay. So I'll go back now with some of the sky color, or rather, it's almost like a like sort of a lace trim. And I'm just using the pale violet turquoise that I sneak into every part of the painting or every part of the series. So that got a little dark, so I'm checking in the mirror. If I'm thinking something, I'll try it. So I've just lightened it a little bit. And we'll try that. So here I'm trying to make brush strokes that are a little more organized, almost as if I'm doing quilting. You know, I'd like the little strokes to have their own pattern and energy. So here I'm just going literally straight out of the tube just to get some of the chroma going. So just like stitching on a quilt, I'm trying to make these brush strokes look a little more interesting and appetizing. Now they are high chroma and dark, so I'm just going to check in the mirror and see if I like them. And again, I find it very easy to change colors. I'm more interested in shape, light, and brush strokes right now. And any colors, I can easily come back and change that. So I have to get rid of that also, but since I have the purple on the brush, I'm just going to finish laying down almost like edging. Okay, so I like the energy of that. Some nice curves, and it doesn't take away from the sense of the tree. So now I'll go back and get rid of that little part of the tree. And see, I accidentally, or at least, you know, sort of on purpose, outline this in blue, and I actually like it. So there might be some aspect of that that I keep. So here's, I believe, the color I mixed up. That's close to the sky color. I like to just hold up the brush to make sure I'm in the ballpark so it's darker. So I'll lighten it a little bit. And so just posing zebra strokes. I like to have two colors going. In other words, not just the sky color, but two versions of it. Again, just sort of that classic Cézanne wall concept. Okay. And then sometimes before I take it all away, sometimes leaving some of the previous items in can be helpful. So I'll leave something, not quite that much. So I'll come back in with some of the pale violet strokes. I'm liking how these colors look together. And I think I'll leave that line at least for now. I kind of like it. So I've got these little zebra strokes. I like that look. So we'll leave them for now and have that little blue line. And I might actually try that blue line elsewhere. See how this one feels circumscribed and then this one is floating. So have to decide, do I try a little bit of that blue line? Let's try it. We can always fix it if we decide we don't like it. But it's working well there, so let's try it somewhere else. Maybe not on all of it. So just a little definition. So I'm trying to make sure it's not too dark. So it's almost like a trial. I can get out of this if I want to, if I don't make a huge statement. I like it. I like that subtle definition of these lines. So I'll skip some. In other words, if I have a long uninterrupted line, interrupt it. So I'm interrupting it here, I'll interrupt it here, and I'll just resume over here. I know this might be off the screen. So I'm just resuming the darker line with the next tuft. And it's barely darker than the rest of the sky. So I think it can work nicely. I like it. At least now, you know, you can wake up tomorrow and decide you hate it. But if I decide I like it, then it would have to go in some other areas. So to me, this is coming together nicely. We said we're going to take some of the red out of that. So this is all precision color mixing. So I have to use maybe one of the bluer colors, so I don't have it on my canvas. So here's the orange oxide. That's kind of what I used, but I'll make it a little bit bluer, or even more purple, we said. So my purple's pretty red, so I might remix it, because most of this painting has more blue purples in it. So I'll probably remix my purple. And again, I'd like it somewhat dark, to just add some depth and some highlights to it. Just the wrong color, just somehow not working. So I'll make it less obvious by bringing some of the surrounding green into it. It's like just too obvious, so I'll bring some of the green into it, you know, to make it a little less obvious. Okay. Okay, and maybe stop to mix up that blue, because it's a nice blue. So I'm gonna just take a tiny break, mix up some of the blue. So it is definitely a neutralized blue, so this is straight ultramarine. I think that's what I used. Maybe I'll purplify it a little bit, put a little bit of purple in it, and then neutralize it down with the, I'm just using transparent oxide orange because it's very subtle and fast. It's not quite that blue. There's a little more green in it, so I'll noodle it toward green, maybe even a little viridian. So, yeah, it's a little more green still. I remember how I did that, so even more green. I'm trying to get this lovely bluish, greenish. Maybe a little more green still. Use the viridian and some more of the neutralizing transparent orange oxide. So close enough. So I kind of like that. So we'll keep this one on the palette. Okay. Any questions, please feel free to ask. And I will try this color. Oops, it's over here. I'm just putting my finger in the hole because all this is carefully done. And see if this new color works. And I'll just put it like on half of the strokes. Yeah, see, it's bringing me closer to what's below it. So I'll just put half, I'll keep some of the warm and make the lower half blue. I find that that often helps. In other words, not changing everything, just change half of it. So some of the quote unquote errors or trials beforehand still show. And often it's that kid pile, that extra kid pile that just makes the difference. Here I'm trying to have sky holes in it. You can see I tried different colors. I'll have to make up my mind on which color. But it was just trying to design sky holes that make sense in this mass. Also, does the branch need to be a little bit darker? Sometimes, again, very much like the Japanese prints, it's not going too dark. So it's artificially ignoring some of the reference that's very dark. So I'm trying to err on the side or trying to figure out what to do. Here I went sort of very dark on maybe this branch here. But see, that's probably too dark. So it's keying the whole painting maybe away from values that are too dramatic, except later in the focal point, which is down at the base of, oops, that's down at the base of the stream. Okay. So I'm sort of happy with what's going on. I like this lining thing, so I'm going to do it for this one. This tuft as well over here. So I'm going to take a little bit of its color and put only a little bit of that purple in so it doesn't stand out too much. It's sort of dry, so it's going to be more dramatic, faster. And everything's wet, so just getting it everywhere. Yeah, I like it purple. I'm just going to go with the straight up purple. Okay. And then we'll fill in. Oops. See, again, this is a slightly different color. It's more golden. So I'm going to add a little more white. And maybe a little purple to take it down in terms of its chroma a little bit. Thinking of the Cézanne wall, give me something different every third. Try to cover some of that white gaps in there and finish the painting. A lot of times things are happening that I'm surprised with, but they're nice. So happy accidents, so to speak. So I kind of leave them in. Check to see what it looks like. So a little higher chroma. I'm going to leave that in. A little area of higher chroma here. Okay, and very easy to mute it down later. So I'm kind of happy with what's happening here. So let's go on to the next area. I'll reposition the canvas so we can see this next batch. So I'd like there to be a nice rhythm here. Again, this is not the focal area, but I think people will notice it. So it's worth working this through. So I'm sort of happy with this line. It's almost like a musical note that comes between these two trees, but there's maybe it's a little too pointy here. So I'm going to sort of try to find a nice shape, but that's not too angular. Just maybe blunt it off. I like it blunted off, quite frankly. And then come back and fill in these holes. So I'm just going to check out the reference. So they're darker and then receiving a little bit of light on the edge. So I use some of the darker colors, like the purple and then the green. Maybe a little bit of the blue. Why the blue? If I wanted to a little bit be lost into the sky, then I need sky blue into it. Okay, here it's straight up canvas, so it's a little bit harder to get a brush stroke. So I used a tiny bit of the medium just to get things started. That's a little bit too dark and too heavy-handed. So I will back out of that. So fix it using, that zebra stripe. So I have something a little bit closer to the sky color, so it's not quite as obvious. And then I'll come back and get bolder later. It's almost like putting the grout colors in. And next figuring out how can I give a richer, bluer, darker color. But that's, a beautiful one. It's the first time around I didn't get it. So just keep trying. And here I'm looking at the reference to see the shapes. It does get dark actually all the way to the edge, but maybe if I make it much skinnier. The other one was a little bit too thick. There's always turning it upside down. Okay. And here's why it's nice to have those same colors here, because I can go back and fix things. This got a little blunted. This a little bit lighter. And adding the white obviously cools it down. And I'm fine with this area because I don't want too much of the eye here. So like some golden areas is great, but I want to reserve that for the focal points. So I'm purposely taking out some of the pizzazz of the colors I'm trying to keep the capture of light. Trying to also make beautiful colors. Trying to also have interesting brush strokes that, are reminiscent of beautiful stitches on a quilt. Trying to have interesting edges. So I'm going to change the color of these edges to blue, and sky blue. So yes, here I'm a little bit departing from the reference and doing a little bit of designer type of, original color stuff going on. But then it's a painting. And let's see, there's sky under here. Let's put the sky, so that we see what shape this is. Or maybe I'll do that lining of it, since that worked really well. So we'll continue doing that. And sort of the softer one can always make it darker. Here, I'm just checking the reference. So it doesn't have to be exactly like the reference, it just has to have an elegant shape. Yeah, look at that interesting color. I like that. I have to remix that. I like what that color did. So again, always making little kid piles. Give me something different every third. That's getting a little too dark. Give me something different every third. Okay. Let's see, that shape's not really there. I think if I try to do it like in the reference, let's just try it. I'll put sky color. That may be too small to pull it off, but let's give it a shot. So about at this level, I have the sky color is turning a little more purple turquoisey. So we'll respect that. So I think it'll have to be much lighter to see it even. And if it feels it's like it's too small and too detailed, then I'll take it out. In other words, why would I take it out? It's just really looking for big, simple shapes. And if they get too complicated, then we lose that big, simple shape thing. So when in doubt, I would simplify it. Yeah, I really like this defined line because all of these things look so sort of wild. And this helps define where they are. Yeah, see, I think that's not gonna work, so we'll just make the whole thing sky, and I'll fix that later. Does that look believable? That it would end like that? I think so. We'll put the little defining line here. Maybe a more subtle color, that's a little bit in your face. Tone it down. And then I have this one too. I'm gonna link them. That's just my instinct, is to link these shapes even though they're separate. And if that's a bad idea, I can always change it later. Okay, so now I'm gonna get the sky done in between these. I may have to stop and mix up some other colors because I don't quite have them. So that's close. Let's mix them up. And then just like we saw with all of my favorite Impressionists and Post-Impressionists, even though their colors look very vivid, they are all neutralizing them down. So even though I need something vivid, I'm going to take the sting off of it, a little bit of the chroma down by just adding a little bit of the complementary color. Okay, so that's a little bit close to that one. And this one will also neutralize it just a little bit. Sometimes neutralizing it too much makes it not shine like sky. So often on the backdrop of these slightly neutralized colors, if I go and now put a high chroma, then it looks like light coming through. So it's playing carefully with chroma. So little neutral and then higher chroma on top, playing with that back and forth. Okay, so we'll go with this darker one here. Here I didn't put that little line, the little helpful guideline. Yeah, I really like that. I'm just making it a little bit more obvious. And then change it up. Okay. Now I'll bring in some of the sky color here. And I'm looking for interesting directions. So here it's gone in one direction. So I'm purposely making stripes to play with the direction without committing too much. And I can always come back and fill them in. So why is the direction important? Honestly, I feel it helps form. It helps sometimes with a sense of atmospheric perspective. It makes it move by having things going in different directions. Again, here, once I find an overall direction, then I'm thinking like stitches on a quilt. You know, if someone's going to actually make it to this level of the painting where they're looking this closely, you know, after being taken in, hopefully drawn to the painting, to me, this is my gift to them. I'd like them to have something lovely to see. So these small little areas like this, it's sort of a reward and a thank you for spending time with the painting. Okay, there might be some mountains down here. So let me move the camera up a hair. I think where everyone is seeing it pretty well. Okay. So just want to clean this area up. This small little area here. Okay, we'll move the camera down instead of the easel. Okay. Okay, so I'm working this area. Just wanted to be able to see a little bit further down. Okay, so I think this is the line of the trees. Yeah, it's a little bit, I think it needs to be up a little bit, or do I want more sky? So I'm gonna make this up a little bit more.
Valerie, you are just off of the
Oh,
camera edge.
Just, yeah, okay, thank you. There we go. Okay. So just clean this area up a little bit. Looks rough. So making strokes here nice and even. It's so nice to have the color on the palette because I can just put it directly on, at least at this stage. And I am looking for those lay it down and leave it alone strokes that are kind of juicy, that don't leave a lot of like the printer cartridge running out of ink. Okay, and then I can come back, of course, and work on the transition between the two. That's at a later date. Here, I'm just trying to get some nice clean strokes, maybe here as well. Okay. Oops. Maybe they angle a little bit toward the tree here. And here there's no rhyme or reason. It's just, you know, a feel, but also it's a design. In other words, everything is sort of coming in this direction. Now there's a little bit of a swerve, which I like. And then should those go in the opposite direction or come in to this direction? Not sure. Maybe into this direction because the focal point's below it. So I'm going to switch directions. And I don't like it as much. So I'll go back. Okay. Okay, and now I'll start filling it in with a different one. Maybe a little bit lighter. See, what do I have here? It's whiter and a little bit bluer. So it's a little bit whiter and a little bit bluer. We'll use the pale violet and more white to get it in the same general value as the others. Let's see how that looks. And then we'll clean up this tuft here. So that's a little bit too light. Oops. That's interesting, that purple. Kind of like it, it's kind of weird, but we can always change it. I'm gonna neutralize it just a hair. So here it's under the rubric of just looking for interesting color combinations. That got a little too yellow. I liked the the stronger purple feel, that lovely lavender. Because we put so much of it everywhere, so it fits. I think color wise. To me, it's a little bit like that route or missing link color. That purple. And here I'm laying it on pretty thick now. Just like I did up here. And that's just a style choice, you know, I'm trying to have thicker paint. So trying to capture form and atmosphere and all these shapes and something somewhat realistic, but using thicker, stripy things. So it's like a game. How do I capture this using thicker paint, weird stripes, and still have it easily recognizable as a representational painting? But if you come close, I'd love for there to be some abstract, swirly things. From a distance, take that little blob out. Okay. So the idea is representational from afar and some interesting sliding movement things going on, and hopefully nice shapes and some interesting color combinations. So here there's some of the orangey, or rather transparent red oxide from the initial drawing, and I kind of like it. So let's try it. I'll just put a small amount into this color we just used and see if that subtle shift, well, it really just neutralized it a lot. So I'm gonna have to go lighter. And then maybe a little bolder with that color. Keeping the same value. Let's go a little dark. And see if it just slightly shifts it to the orange, because it looks kind of nice. Maybe it's also I've just gotten used to it. But I'm gonna try to make it work. Even if it's just a small distance, it makes me happy. So there's a little bit, and actually there are clouds, so that can work. So the clouds have a color. Maybe I'm gonna choose a sort of orangey color I did on the other side there. Forgot about the clouds. Okay. Just finishing the little stitches on the quilts, so things feel even. Remember, I switched the direction here, so the layer that I lay down here is going to help with the final direction. Oops. Fortunately, I have some of the original color. And reassert or clean up my mistakes. Okay. Yeah, and sort of a happy mistake. By putting a little bit of that transparent red oxide. Almost as an edging color. Let's see if I put a little more, how that works. Okay. I think I like the blue better. I like that blue better. So now we'll clean this up. So I like to just really take in the reference to make sure I'm getting a feel for what the reference is showing. Decide if I like it. Do I steal from another part of the canvas of the reference? But this has to be much darker. And then it has had a nice little slide to it. Let me see if I can capture that. Maybe that's a little too weird, but let's try it. So I'll fill in the sky and decide if that's too weird, or if that little sort of character. Okay, so we'll make this darker, and then it also bleeds out over the tree. So I might not make it bleed out as much as it is, and then the tree gets really dark there. So I'll try to capture some of that. Let's first go for the dark tree, since I have some of that nice purple color. That might be too red for the painting and all, so I'll neutralize that down. Let's tone it down a little bit. Try it bluer. So maybe it's both. Sometime if I'm not sure, I'll do both and then leave it and then decide which one I like best. The more orangey one, the bluer one. Okay. And looking at the screen, that's quite dark. Okay. So I'm coming back in with green stripes just to minimize it a little bit. Make it closer to the tree color. And let's go for the tree. Okay. And then figuring out a direction. Change up the colors a little as it gets closer to the edge. Checking the camera to see if that works okay or just a little bit weird. I think maybe it needs to be shorter. Something about it I don't like, so I have to figure out what that is. Maybe it's just too important, so I'll make it smaller by putting more sky around it. And I'm doing it in a way that's not committing too much. I can get out of this. So here I made it a little smaller. It will need sky holes. See, there's one maybe here. When in doubt, I'll just put like 1.5 sky holes. Even if there's like 10, I think just one good one somewhere is tells the story. To make it stand out, I'm gonna have to go a little bit darker on this side. Be conscious of the shape of that hole. So that got too it got a little bit too neutralized. So I need some boldness. Let's come back with a nice dark color. And it shows off the edge of the tree. You're just expanding a little bit of that, the outline. See if I like that a little bit better. And then I'll have to make some kind of decision about the edge here. I'll make it a little bit smaller. But I don't want to look, I'm thinking dog's head, and now I kind of can't unsee it. Like it looks like the head of a dog, and that you can't unsee it after that. So I have to do something to make it a little bit different. I think I like that it has a little bit of connection with the shape above. So any questions you have in this last narrated portion, please feel free to put them in chat. I think I'll go in with some other triple, or rather the purple. It's just working out as a lovely grout color or missing link color. So I use it literally to plug some of the holes. Okay. Then the shape of the green, it feels like it needs to go up a little bit more on the tree. Just playing again the game of trying to always have beautiful shapes. Okay, and I'm not sure if I wanted to overlap. I might just have the darkness of the tree. And it has a pointy shape to it. So here I'm petting to get some of all this high chroma color off of the tree and smushing it down here. Because I put a little bit too much. So it's one of the few times I'll pet just to cover that shape. So it's a little bit warm, and then the painting has a lot of cool areas, but it's almost like I need the red next to the green, right? But I can then bring in some of the blue, maybe on the belly part of the tree. Almost as an eyeshadow. Ooh, I like that. It's almost like a little bit of reflected light. And then change it up to something different. Okay, so we're starting soon into the second hour. So again, thank you, those of you who have come just for that first hour. Thank you so much for being here. And then now it'll just be the quiet painting part. I'm still happy to talk and take questions, but mainly just painting. Okay. Yeah, I'm happy with this lining thing. I think that's, I like what's happening. So I'll probably do it in other areas of the painting. And I'll share which one. See, there's this long. I did up the chroma a little bit on the screen just because I thought it's a little more interesting. So this one also I might have to outline with some of the blue, but I'll do that later after I've let myself get used to this one. But I'll do it up here. Up here, and let me change. Well, then I have to fill in this little hole too. Maybe I'll do that one first and fill in all and just finish this part. Okay. Look at my reference. Okay. So I'm gonna keep this as a sky hole, I think. Right in here. Some of it as a sky hole. Because I'm okay with the shape that's there. So I'll keep some of this as a sky hole. Again, be mindful of the shape. Maybe it goes up a little bit more. Trying to not have the edge too blunt. Try not to overdo it. And then soften the edges a little bit or bring in another color. Just because the tree usually is absorbing some of that light. So I'll show that by just changing the color around some of the edges. Okay, and I can always come back. And then maybe that edge, if it's turning, I can add a little more darkness to it. Just to make it turn a little bit more. Okay. Maybe that was a little too much, so I can go backwards a little bit. Okay. Okay, so filling this up. So I'm looking at the reference, but also part inventing. Because I like the shape, so I don't want to lose too much of it. And then trying to figure out with all these branches, do I add one or do I have enough branches coming out right now? There is one, I would have to have one to make this make sense, so let's put one in. So I'm just gonna do it in green for now. Again, I can always change the color, so I want something not too different than the sky. So back to designing. Feels like I need a branch for this to make sense. And I don't feel I have to represent over here, but it has to start getting thicker to be believable. And then come off at an interesting angle, maybe a little more acute angle. So I'll fix the sky around it. And make the branch a little bit thicker. And darker where it goes off, maybe it's too dark. So I'll slash sky color through it to make it less obvious. So it's still there, but I'm making it a little bit less important. Okay. And then maybe that sky color over here. And look in the monitor, see if I like that. I'm not sure I like that. So it's nice to have a color that's close to it on the palette. So we can maybe a little bit darker. So it makes the branch not stand out so much if this part of the tree is sort of the same value. So I'm trying to disguise the branch. But I think people are, gonna expect it. But I don't want it to take over or be too obvious. And stick some other grout color in there in some of these holes. Maybe soften some of these edges so it's not so obvious. And here I'm just using straight up pointillism type of stroke to soften the edge. So many different techniques for softening an edge. This one's just easy to do. I'll go back and fix some of the stripes. And leave some of the little pointillism. And distress a little bit, interrupt a line. And then call it a day. I'll come back to it, but I find I overwork it if I obsess over one area without finishing the other. So I'm trying to make sense out of that. Maybe one branch in there and the rest is sky color. But see, it feels like if I do too much sky color, it's too much. So I have to do some subtle, maybe softened branches. And maybe again using like pointillism to suggest some branches. So here I'm going for the shape. And then I can figure out the color later. Maybe some of the tree, a little bit of tree color. Find a direction. So again, just designing. I like that little graphic area. Here I'll just route it. with my purple. Got to fill it in with something, so a little brown color. Then maybe sky color. This is the darker one here. Okay. So some few dark ones here. Let's see if I, again, can always lighten it, but I'm liking what it looks like. Ooh, that's kind of nice. So that again was an accident. So a little bit like eyeshadow. Maybe I can bring it to a few other areas. Just that little outline. Okay. Now look at it in the mirror, make sure I sort of like it. Yeah, overall, I kind of like what's happening, the directional changes, the shapes. I'm happy with it, so I'm gonna go ahead and finish these holes. I'm trying to be a lot better about finishing. A lot of times, if I feel I've captured 90% of it, I'm like, phew, get a little scared to touch it. Here, I need to move to finish. So I'm gonna fill in those holes and finish, and then move on to a different area. Okay. So there's some little blues in there, which I like. So I have that on my palette, so I'm gonna fill in with those blues. Maybe that's a little too dark. But I like the idea of that subtle blue in there. So here, just really filling in. It's almost like filling in grout colors into a design that I already like. And then I'm looking, for a little rhythm. I've got these deep blues here, so to have a few in this tuft feel like not a bad idea. Then we'll go with some of the greens in between. Maybe a high chroma green. Let's see what that does. So that really makes a bit of a statement. So I'll just make a little bit of a statement and then go back to something a little bit duller. So just do some of that big statement. But 3 is a good number, so I'll put a little here too. So touches of high chroma, but I think kept under control. So here I'm diminishing them a bit. So you see it, but it's not overwhelming. And then grout some of these little holes. So I literally just use some of this transparent pale violet, or rather pale violet, as grout. Because overall I like the design, I don't want to change things, but I need to fill in the holes. With grout. So another big secret is just filling in a lot of the holes toward the end with grout color. See here, I'll probably need more, that's not working. So I'll have to finish some of the drawing there, some of the painting shapes. Bring it out to the line. Oh, the golden looks nice. So make the golden at the top of all of the lines and let it get darker toward the bottom. I think darker and maybe a little bluer. That seems to be working out nicely. Some of the bluer color. And then maybe a few dots of the orange. Let's see how it looks. Just a few little dots. Just to bring something warmer, the complements in, just a few dots. And keep them relatively neutral. If I go too high chroma, it usually is a little too much, you know, and if your taste is more toward fauves, then you would go for the higher chroma. I'm trying to make it pretty subtle, especially since this is not a focal area. See here, it got it too dark, but I can just literally overlay it with another color, painting wet onto wet to fix my mistake. And then grout it toward the edge. So that everything ends with a softer sort of groutier color. Got too dark, so I think I'll lighten it. That's too light, so I think I'll darken it. Or that's a sky hole, isn't it? Gives an idea for a sky hole. Maybe I can have a sky hole in there. Now I'll finish this one. I think this is all sky. So. I'm gonna keep it a little bit overly neutral. Just to fill in the shape. I'll spike the neutral with a little high chroma. I just like these colors, but it's hard to tell what's going on. I'll spike some of that neutral. And it's okay if the viewer has to guess a little bit. You know, I figure everybody knows it's a tree. So I can let people guess a little bit, and it's a little bit abstract, but there's something about the shape I kind of like. So I find it's okay not to resolve every single shape, you know, maybe close enough, but let's bring that. Maybe I'll only bring a little bit of the line and leave some of that as a lost edge unresolved. Let's try it. Okay. So it's a little duplicative. So not so pretty. So let's overpaint it. And let's see, I no longer have that color. I had it on the other palette. Oh, it was so pretty. This really beautiful neutral yellow. But I sort of have it here. We'll just neutralize this yellow. So I kept the palette. It's on the table, not too far from me, so I can sort of look. This, I think this color. So I like to keep my older palette when I'm doing, you know, the same painting. For that reason, because I didn't mix every single color that was on it yet. Here I'm just playing with the shape. There's something about it I don't care for. So just looking for a better shape. Okay, let's see, what is the tree doing? The sun's on the right hand side. And then there's a lot of this tree greens coming down over it, which I'll address. When will I address it? I guess now. So I guess resolving this. Yeah. My reference is stuck behind here. I'm gonna take it out. I blow up the reference to the same size as the painting often. I find it just, it makes it so much more fun to do the painting. If I have a really good reference. Yeah, here's my reference. It's a large, same size as the painting, actually. So I'm just gonna bring it out so I can have a look at that area a little better. Okay, this is the part where I find I really have to like push and stay focused. Um, my attention span is like everybody else's, it's about 45 minutes. Here I pushed like, maybe an hour and 15 minutes. So about now, I have to push. I'm just gonna take a sip of something and refocus. But the first hour is fairly easy, and then this part here now I have to make myself focus. Okay. Especially since I like what's happening with the painting, and if I let down, then you mess it up. So that's what I mean by pushing up, to really make myself think of all of the fundamentals. Okay, so the reference shows there's some type of so I'm hesitating deciding which of it I'll keep. So I'm not sure I want it to cross over into here. I like the shape. And then the shape with this one has to, okay, so it's lower. So I'll start it there. Again, just trying to design something. So it goes way up in here. Just keep it almost like music fitting in. So again, I'm purposely using something a little neutral that I could easily get out of. So here I'm into my sky. And do I want to be? No. So I'm gonna put this whole thing down, almost like transpose it in music, so that I can keep more of my sky. I like the sky. Okay. Maybe a tiny bit of a redesign. And then I'll come back in with sky and fix it. So I'm trying to make myself learn a little bit how to paint differently. In other words, normally I would just stop, enjoy what I've done, take a break. It could even be a day or two of break. And now I figured I just have to stay focused and finish. So that is a little new for me. I would say before, I mean, I work very hard, but sometimes I call it spoiled painting. It's like, let me stop now. And before I could get away with it, because I would I had weekends, I would wake up at 5, I'd stay up late. I don't have all those options now. So I figured I have to switch over to a different way of painting and paint to finish, during the allotted hours. And it means like right here, staying more focused and making myself really stay very connected with the fundamentals. Sort of stay in the game, don't take too much of a break. And I'm thinking that's how I can, reach the goals that I have for the paintings that I want to do over the next 12 months. And still also have time, say, to walk, to have weekends with family, have downtime to do other things that I like. So it's to be super focused. And I haven't always done that, except right before a show. Then I get hyper focused and work like 13 hours, um, to get the show done. Not so much fun. It's exhilarating, but clearly, I don't think most of us can do that all the time without paying a price. So here I'm trying to be more regular, focused. So that's a new thing for me. Okay. So I was thinking that I could make this corner darker, so I mixed up some paint just to see it, just for that reason. Let's try it out. In other words, if I think it, might as well try it out. So it's sort of a neutral color that I mixed up, but a cobalty in it, spiked with a little cobalt. So it's almost like picture corners, you know, if they're a little bit darker, it frames the painting better. Feels artificial, but it just works. So I call these like picture corners. And then it has to have an elegant shape, you know, it can't just be straight across, it has to have a shape. So I'm just trying a little bit first. I'll stand back to see if that darker color is gonna work. And then go for the pretty shape. Yeah, I think it's gonna work. And if not, I can always change it, but I think it's gonna work, having that darker one. So now I'm gonna just go for the shape. Yeah, not all canvases are perfect, even sometimes the custom frame ones, I mean, it depends on how the surface was done. So here, I'm just trying to get the surface covered, it's behaving a little bit weird. Just in this small little patch. But I have a lot of nice paint to lay over top of it, so I've overcome it. Any questions? Anybody still left? Anybody there? So. Okay. Okay, and so it's the technical part of covering some of these little holes. And then once that's done, then I'm thinking about the quality of the brush stroke that I'm laying down in the direction. And I can get thicker. This whole corner is gonna be a little bit darker. And you can sort of feel the drag of the paint, it's like partially dry. So it's a little tacky. Okay. Okay. So, may I ask how many people are there? Do we have people still there? Okay, I see you. Okay, let's keep going. Hmm. Okay. Let me get you some light on the palette. Okay. And then I have all of this dark here. It's quite dark. It's gonna really change the light dark pattern. So I just am mentioning that to myself because that's an important change. So I just want to be mindful that I'm into territory that's changing light dark shapes. So I'm seeing a shape within a shape, which I'll try to bring out. There's another shape within a shape. So back to designing. Shape within a shape. Looks like that goes down more. I think I like the sky coming down in there, or maybe that's too complicated. I'm not sure this branch is doing all that much, so let's. Maybe this is where some of it gets covered. Okay. There seems to be another shape here. See the triangle here. We keep the green going. Super dark. But again, that's a nice base on which to put the other strokes. So I put it dark just to try to make that one pop. And then I'll have to do some interesting things with the tree. Lining to make this pop. So I'm gonna have to resolve the tree color like now. Clean my brush. And this lighter. I'll put a little bit of this yellowy one, just sunlight. Just like Cézanne would reach for ochre whenever there was sunlight. I'm going to try to do the same. Even if the tree is a reddish gray, if there's sunlight, it's technically a little bit of yellow. Oops, that's a lot of yellow. But let's try it. I think I like the orangey color better. We'll have to change it just the light is glinting a little bit. It's harder for me to see it. Can you still see it? Yeah. So I'm gonna have to go way lighter if it's gonna feel like sunlight. Like that light. This part, maybe, is part of that dark shape. Do we make it that big? Close to the other greens. Maybe I need a bigger percentage. Red. So here I'm just really testing everything out. I'm just trying to find my way with how I want to interpret this. Maybe this is the light side just to show off the dark of the tree. But that's not working too well. Okay. So this orange really is working nicely. It comes off as light, shows off really well, so let's keep using it. It's beautiful. Thank you, orange. So I don't want to make it too much. Has to still be in proportion with everything else, but I kind of like it. See, if I make it really big, then I've got to go touch up a lot of areas. Not quite ready to do that. But there's a glow that I like for this area. So let's see if I can just keep just the right portion of it. Here I'm just over painting the edge with the color. Again, a way of softening edges. Bringing a little bit more toward the center. So there it's just a small amount as opposed to a really in your face amount. kind of like this color for showing light. I'm putting it thick, so I'm gonna have to make up my mind by tomorrow morning if that's the color, because it's really sort of thick tiles. I'm gonna go back in with sort of the blue lining. You know, you see that a lot of Cézanne paintings, and at first I thought it was somewhat artificial until you start, you know, looking carefully at trees and it's like there. So I thought, oh, okay, so it's not so artificial. Maybe the color is amped up, but there are these interesting, super sharp edging to some of the trees. And it's often a bluish color. So it just makes it easier to do. So I'm liking these color combinations. And there's a little break there, I'm gonna leave it. A little more purple. Just again to create an edge that's not so sharp, because all of this is less important. So just creating some edge work there. So where's my darker purple? Okay, so similar values, so it doesn't stand out too much. I think as it goes off the page, I need to take away some of that orange. So your eye doesn't go off the page, just keep it down here. So I'll let little bits show through, but by and large, trying to not let it take over. A little bit bluer. Give me something different every third or every plane change for the tree. There's some accidental things in here I'm gonna leave and I'll, you know, think about it and make some changes tomorrow. I'm sure I won't wind up making changes here. It feels like there's a repetition of this orange. This branch is not doing too much for the painting, might get rid of it. Okay. I'm liking the blue. Okay. So in this last 20 minutes, if anybody has any questions, please feel free, or we'll just continue painting together till the end. Yeah, I'm liking these touches of blues. I'm liking the blue outline. It gave it some structure. It really feels like reflected light. How convenient that it's the blue. Here I put turquoise early on. Let's keep that going. Oops. Something very soft here. Okay. So maybe we'll work on this little area. Oh, we'll finish this one. Okay. Trying out interesting directions. That might be too extreme. Trying to make find interesting things for this shape. Bring in the sky. It's a little bit on the weird side. Try to unweird it. So here I'm gonna keep the strokes not too thick because it's just a little weird. I know I'm probably not gonna get this tonight. And so first pass. But wanna make it so I can backtrack. I'm keeping everything a little bit thin. Again, back to design. It's how do I capture what's on this reference, but make something more interesting. And right now, again, it looks like a fish, can't unsee the fish. So I probably will need this other little shape here, even if it's just a little bit. Just for the overall shape. Might need that. Okay. No. Maybe it's somehow merges with this one. Let's try the blue trick. Okay, maybe you can get away with that. And Caroline, is that you?
It's just me.
Okay, I'll let you go then. I'll let you go.
All right. Well, have a
Thank
good
you.
evening.
Thank you so much, Caroline. Have a good one. Bye-bye.